We all love a good solution. I mean, that feeling when a really tough problem is finally cracked and you can just set it in stone and move on. But what if that's actually the biggest mistake we could make? Today, we're going to dig into why a solution is never really finished, and we'll do it through the story of a place called Aurelia's Guild. So, picture this. After years of brilliant work, the leaders of Aurelia's Guild are standing back, admiring their handiwork. They've built massive levees to stop floods, they've trained pigeons to spot dragonfire from miles away, and they've got vaults overflowing with food. The builder, dusting off her hands, proudly declares, "We have solved our problems." You can just feel the confidence, right? That sense that the job is done, finished, forever. And boom, there it is. That's the question that this whole thing hinges on. This feeling of done is super comforting, but is it real? Or is it actually a pretty dangerous illusion? So let's start right there with what I'm calling the illusion of done. In the beginning, Aurelia's Guild felt totally safe. They believed they had created this perfect, permanent set of defenses that could handle anything the world threw at them. But, of course, not everyone was buying it. The Watcher, probably the wisest person on the council, steps up with this warning, and this is such a powerful idea. He's saying, a solution isn't a statue you build and then forget about. No, it's more like a garden. It's a living system that you have to tend to. It has to grow and adapt, or it's just going to wither away. The Watcher knew that just talking wasn't going to cut it. So, to prove his point, he didn't just argue. He set up a test. He orchestrated a few events that would shine a big, bright light on all the hidden cracks in their quote-unquote perfect solutions. The first challenge came from something simple: the weather. The levees, the Guild's pride and joy, didn't just collapse overnight. Instead, after some heavy rain, little cracks started to show up. See, the problem wasn't the stone they used, it was the ground underneath it. Over 5 years, the soil had slowly washed away. The world had changed, but their solution hadn't. So what is this really showing us? Well, those cracking levees get right to the heart of a huge concept: deteriorating assumptions. Think about it. Every single solution is built on a foundation of beliefs about how the world works. But what happens when those beliefs are just not true anymore? When the soil isn't stable like you thought? Well, the whole solution starts to crumble. All right, next up, the pigeons. Their high-tech, feathered early warning system. But here's the thing, there hadn't been any dragons for years, so the pigeons were living the good life. They got plenty of food, not a lot of stress, and they'd become lazy, comfortable, and honestly pretty useless. And these fat pigeons are the perfect example of our next big idea: ineffective controls. A control is just the fancy word for a tool you use to manage a risk. But just like anything, if you don't test it and keep it sharp, it gets dull. The Guild had a control system, but they completely forgot to check if it was still working. Okay, so we've seen physical things break down, but the Watcher's test had one more part to it, and this one was way more subtle. The next threat wasn't about crumbling stone or lazy birds. It was an attack on the Guild's most important asset: its reputation. All of a sudden, whispers start spreading from rival towns. The rumors were simple, and they were absolutely brutal. They claimed Aurelia's defenses were falling apart and that their vaults were basically empty. Now, the most important part of this is that they were just rumors, not facts. The impact was immediate and devastating. The villagers started to panic. Trust in the Guild just evaporated. And even though the vaults were mostly full and the walls were still standing, the perception of weakness became a real crisis. This proves that a solution can be perfect on paper, but can still fail completely if people lose faith in it. And this brings us to a concept that is absolutely vital for anyone managing anything: stakeholder perception risk. Your solution doesn't exist in a bubble. The people it affects, your customers, your investors, your community, their confidence is a critical part of whether it succeeds or fails. If they stop believing, the whole thing can fall apart, no matter what the data says. So the Guild is in a tough spot. Their assumptions are out of date, their controls don't work, and their reputation is in the gutter. It was painfully obvious that their set it and forget it strategy was a total failure. It was time for a whole new way of thinking. This is where the Watcher finally explains his whole philosophy. True monitoring isn't just staring at a screen. It's an active, hands-on process. You have to constantly challenge your own beliefs. You have to stress test your systems against new problems, and you have to pay really close attention to what the rest of the world thinks about you. Now, for any of you studying for the CP1 exam, this should be setting off some major alarm bells. The Watcher's whole idea is pretty much the actuarial control cycle. That part of the cycle, called monitoring the experience, isn't just the last thing you do. It's the engine that keeps the whole process moving. It feeds what you've learned right back into the start so you can redefine the problem and come up with an even better solution next time. So the Guild actually listened. They created a brand new ritual they would do every quarter. And this wasn't just basic upkeep. It was a full-on, systematic monitoring process. They would check the levies for those deteriorating assumptions. They'd weigh the pigeons to make sure their controls were still effective. And, this is so important, they would survey the villagers to monitor that stakeholder perception. So what is the big lesson in all of this? Well, the Guild learned a really powerful lesson about the difference between just getting by and actually being built to last. Okay, let's do a quick recap to make sure these ideas stick. The cracked levies, that's all about your outdated assumptions. The fat pigeons, that's a classic sign of your controls getting weak. The rumors, that shows you the danger of perception risk. And that new quarterly ritual the Guild started, that is your perfect model for an active monitoring cycle. So why is this so important for the exam? Because this is teaching a fundamental truth about being a professional. Solving complex problems is never, ever a one-time thing. It's a dynamic, looping process of defining a problem, solving it, and most critically, monitoring it. In the end, the story of Aurelia's Guild teaches us that coming up with the solution is just the first step. The real work, the actual art of it, is in the constant vigilance it takes to keep that solution alive, effective, and relevant. That is the difference between things that are temporary and things that truly endure. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. Doesn't matter if you're studying for an exam, running a project, or building a company. What are the core beliefs that everything is built on? And are you sure, really sure, that they aren't silently cracking right now, right under the surface?